I am presenting excerpts from the never to be completed opus called The Gospel According to Harry. This is a combination of what I think are facts, some opinions I have, and a lot of utterly fabricated imagination. So we're going to start with reality. Whoops. Let me start my timer. That's a very important part of this. Reality 101 from the Gospel According to Harry. The reality that we experience and think exists consists of two main parts: the real world and the reality we perceive. I will start with the real world. I think a real world exists and would exist even if there were no conscious beings to be aware that it exists. The scientific method attempts to learn as much as possible about the real world. The scientific method consists of searching for predictable relationships between things that can be observed and measured. This search is fallible and can result in incorrect conclusions. The process is such that over time, any errors made by science will eventually be discovered and corrected. I don't believe this. Rather, it is an assumption I make. And I will be discussing assumptions and beliefs if there's time. Next up, that was the real world. Now we get to the reality we perceive. This is a really messy area, and I'm going to just slog through the mud and fog and attempt to tell you how it looks to me. I don't believe this either. It's just another set of assumptions. I'm going to discuss what a conscious human being, such as me, perceives as reality. To keep it simple, I'm going to stay in the first person. I'm going to say I rather than he or she or it or the newly redefined they. I realize that doing this makes me sound like a somewhat amateurish, makes this sound like a somewhat amateurish discussion by an egocentric person. So it goes. I am a set of filters into which flow data from the real world, the one that science is trying to figure out. My five senses get data from things that are really happening in the real world. Digression. 5 senses. Taste and smell are independent. Touch includes touching a warm coffee cup, having my leg cut off, and an orgasm. That doesn't make sense. There's more than 5 senses. Real world data consists of anything my body can be aware of that comes from the real world. Oh, by the way, my physical body is part of the real world. This means both abdominal pain and sexual pleasures are both from the real world. That data does not come in specific granular units. It comes in as a spectrum, a range, everything from nothing all the way out to all that is possible is in the range. So my body receives scientific data from the real world, including data from within my body. Then what? I am a data receiver. I will refer to that data receiver as my body. I told you it was messy. For a variety of reasons, my body ignores or never developed the ability to experience a lot of data. My body probably hears radio waves, but I need a man-made radio to interpret them. There's probably a lot of other stuff like that. Consciousness is part of my body. Here are my take on some levels of awareness that were mentioned in a talk here a few months ago. Dreamless sleep, dreaming, normal consciousness, the observer, and I'll talk more about the observer at this time, and the observer of the observer. It's my gospel, and I can stick that in if I want. And the highest level is the spiritual consciousness of the universe. So those are the levels. We're in, presumably, normal, most of us, normal consciousness now. You might try checking in with the observer every now and then. My view is that these states are part of a spectrum. They're not individual states. It's a spectrum, a range, going more or less from the consciousness of a rock all the way up to the consciousness of God. Okay, so the data for the real world is impacting my body. Some of it finds a way into my conscious awareness. It has been processed as it comes in, and I just take it for granted that it could be distorted in any number of ways. I find it useful to think of my consciousness as having two main groupings. One is those thoughts that I am actually aware of at a given moment. The second one consists of those memories, stored thoughts, that are at the moment readily accessible by my consciousness. Someone comes into the room and I recognize them. The set of things I would recognize is in the second grouping. That's the simplest part of this consciousness part of the gospel. Now it gets messier. I also find it useful to think of myself as having something I will call my subconscious. It seems to me there's a lot of stuff in there. Here are a few groupings I see. All those memories of experiences from my life that are not easily accessible, but may still influence how I behave and what I perceive. Jung's archetypes are in there. Genetic predispositions are in there. A recent article suggests that there are genes pushing individuals to become liberals or conservatives. Repressed traumas are in there. Repressed traumas that are seriously messing up our ability to see what is so. We are still in reality 101. However, I'm laying the groundwork for reality 102. In reality 101, I'm trying to stick to the basic hardware and software of the system. I'm trying to present a kind of mental image related to mechanics, the plumbing, the flows in the system I call me. Here comes the big piece of my reality 101. This piece kind of forces me to move on to reality 102. You may recall that I was trying to make a distinction between the real world and the reality we perceive. I've been talking about my view that though the real world data is impacting my body, there are forces at play that may distort it or block what I perceive. Some aspects of these forces are the focus of reality 102. However, here comes another joker in the deck, another wild card. This one is not only capable of making a game unfair or unplayable or easily rigged, this one can turn over the playing board and spill the pieces and the players. Where they land can be near or far from the real world. My mind, and yours, I think, but I'm trying to stay in the first person, is capable of creating a completely fabricated perceived reality that I cannot distinguish from so-called reality. I know this is so because of dreaming. I do it there. Have you ever woken up from a dream only to realize you woke up into another dream? The Matrix movies and other sources suggest that my entire reality may be fabrication. Even if there is a real world like the one I think, even if the real world like the one I think exists, my awareness, my consciousness may be somewhere else. Once again, it's not just a yes or no or on-off situation. It's a spectrum. I could be anywhere between as fully conscious of the real world as anyone can be, or totally delusional. I'm ending reality 101. We're moving on to reality 102. My final point is that my mind, and I think any human mind, is fully capable of creating a completely false reality. Hypnotized people can be burned by cold objects. Firewalkers can walk over red-hot coals. It's messy. Reality 102. Here's a quote from an article I read last week that was discussing how people could believe some of the currently popular political lies. Without the yoke of truthfulness around their neck, they can choose beliefs that flatter their worldview or justify their direction. That points in the direction I want to take us now. So my mind is capable of distorting data coming in from the real world, and worse, my mind is capable of generating its own fabricated data. So what? Well, for me, this raises a few rather basic questions. Does my life have any significance that I can be aware of? Can I do anything that would make my life seem meaningful or more meaningful to me? Why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? Digression. Lucky you. The song I will sing later gives the answer I have found to the above question. The one about why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? My last song, I think, answers that question for me. The audio part may not help, but I will put the words on the screen. I've tried to give you some perspective on my real world and my perceived reality. Reality 102 has to do with how I think I should deal with the views expressed so far. First off, I think it's very important to pay attention to the real world. I think we need to know as much as possible about what is really so about those things that might impact us. The awareness of our impact on the climate on the earth is a good example. That's part of the real world. To the extent that we create and live in a reality that does not pay attention to the real world, we risk walking in front of a truck we choose not to see. So I'm a big pusher of scientific reality. You are entitled to your own opinions, but not your own facts. I have two ways to view what I do with the above views assumptions. The first is the narrative. I read years ago that one way of viewing life is that reality bombards us with a series of facts, real world events and experiences. We have some control over some of them, but many just happen independently of anything we can do. Given that life is like that, our job is to use those facts to make a good narrative, a good story, a good life. It is possible for two novelists could use the same set of facts in a story in such a way that one novel is a meaningful, interesting story and the other is trash. So our job is to take the facts that have thrown at us and make an interesting, meaningful story out of it. That's our job, to recreate and maintain an ongoing narrative of our life that makes it the most interesting, rewarding story possible. Another way of dealing with reality would be based on considerations like these listed below. I think survival of the human race seems like a pretty good goal to keep high on my priority list. I think the goal of my life is to live in such a way that it is as satisfying as possible. This means taking into considerations all the trade-offs I encounter and choosing what I think is best, all things considered. In order to have a satisfying life, I think I have to make choices that allow me to have as much freedom to make related choices as possible. I'm trying to turn the page. This means avoiding a life sentence in prison. This means avoiding being institutionalized with insanity. For me, this means avoiding being shunned by the communities I want to be in: society, family, church, nation, friends, etc. How do I do that? Here's another excerpt from the Gospel according to Harry. I deal with my reality as a challenge to maintain an appropriate balancing of the many forces affecting me. I remain reasonably sane. I behave in such a way that those I care about trust me to behave appropriately within acceptable limits. Sanity is a state of dynamic equilibrium. And I might add, like any dynamic equilibrium, you can fall off if you're not careful. It's not rigid, it's not uncontrolled. Here are some examples of dynamic equilibrium. Two kids playing happily and safely on a seesaw. A storm. It has an identity. It persists for a while. It's a dynamic equilibrium. The orbit of a planet around a star. A number of different forces, mainly gravity between it and other bodies, are impacting it, yet the orbit may continue, predictably, for millions of years. Tornadoes. Have you ever seen dust devils? those little tiny tornadoes that go sweeping across a plain, how do they persist as long as they do? It's kind of a dynamic equilibrium. My point is that I need to find a way of dealing with all the forces pushing my consciousness that allows me to continue to function and enjoy my life. There are so many forces. Some are genetic presets. The desire for sex can get out of control during parts of our life. Some are learned from the many communities and cultures we have been in: family, political party, church, friends, town, city, nation, earth, universe. And some are to learn and respect the trade-offs in the real world. Needing food, safety comes to mind. So the bottom line is that I need to be aware that I'm seeking a comfortable equilibrium between all the forces that impact me. I do this by noticing whichever are conscious at any moment and making good choices. Okay, we are near the end of the formal part of this presentation. We finish here, speak to God, and move on to what is called, oh yes, polylogue. That's where the speaker is open to whatever you think appropriate. I like the analogy when I did this once. When you go to a fair and you get to sit on a stool and people throw things at a target, if they hit it, the stool drops you into a giant bucket of water. So that's the way the polylogue goes. Now, let's see how we're doing on time. Oh, not too bad. So, I do have some things I'm going to cover later, but this is the main part. I'm now going to enter into another, what I think probably will amuse you part. Many of you know, have heard me discuss, I have conversations with Fred. Fred is a platypus. I've had him about 30 years, 25 to 30 years. This all began one day. I took him to a camp, and there was a woman at the camp who used to carry around little stuffed animals. And I said, oh, I've got one of those in my room. She said, well, why don't you bring it out? So I brought it out the next day. We were walking to lunch, and she had her birds, I think they were, and I had Fred. She said, what's his name? And I said, I don't know. I've never asked him. So in my mind, I thought, what's your name? And immediately jumped into my mind, P-H-R-E-D, Fred. I didn't intentionally make it up. Since that time, and I've also discussed this with people like Phil Ernst, who finds it interesting. I talk to Fred. So I will have a conversation with Fred right now. Hey, Fred, and I'll tell you whatever comes into my mind. What do you think of this talk? Same old stuff, Harry. You've been going over this for years. You've added a little bit, but basically this is indeed the gospel according to Harry. Yeah, Fred, but do you have an opinion? No, I don't have judgments, my Harry. I try to sort of be just, let's say, unconditional love. That's Fred. Now, about a year ago, I got into doing something which remember, I'm trying to stay sane. So I worried a little bit about this, but I got into some conversations with inanimate objects. I think what had happened was something had fallen off my desk, and I was annoyed and spoke to it and said, you dumb book, now I got to bend and pick you up. And the book responded, or at least in my mind, I thought it responded, and sort of said, it's not my fault. I'm on your side. I would like to help you, but I live in the real world and there's laws of gravity and things. And if you put me in a position where I'm going to fall, I don't have any agency. I don't have any choice. It's not that I'm trying to cause you problems. It's that you didn't respect the rules. So I would like to help you, but I can't, Later, I had some tangled ropes and cords and things, and I was trying to get them untangled. And I, again, began to complain, and they said, wait a second, Harry, we didn't choose to be difficult for you. We don't have any choice in this. The fact that we're tangled up is because you put us in this box and let us get all tangled up. So don't blame us. We're on your side. We would like to help as much as we possibly can. And about the only way we can help you, say the inanimate objects, is by suggesting that you pay attention to what you're doing. We can tell you that while you're doing it if you're listening, but you aren't usually listening, Harry. So let me give you an example. Hey, Maxine, why are you upside down? I don't want you upside down. Harry, I didn't choose to be upside down. Now, that's right, set me up. You put me down that way on top of my head. So look, I would like to be any way you want me to be, but if you put me down on my head, I'm going to be upside down. So there's a conversation with inanimate objects. Now, here's my big reach and where I really step off the equilibrium sanity plane. I have had conversations with God. And I don't think I'm special in this. You can do the same thing. All you have to do is speak to God and wait for the answer, and whatever comes in your mind, just assume it's God. I mean, I don't really think God's speaking to me, but what the heck? It's okay with me. One of the experiences I had was there is a Quaker meeting in Abingdon that meets sometimes. There was, I think it's still there. It's in the Elder Spirit Village. So I was a Quaker in New York for 23 years. So I went a few times. And one time I was sitting in the meeting in silence, the hour of silence, and I was decided to talk to God. So I said, basically, I don't really believe in God, a traditional God, but I said, God, I would like to know if you really exist. Could you give me some sort of sign, anything, like make the shade go up a ½ inch while I'm looking at it, or anything that would sort of indicate to me that you really exist. Into my mind came a flood of thoughts. I think there were even swear words in there, like, you dumb idiot, you stupid fool, look around you, look out the window, look at the trees, look at the people sitting in the room, look at your life. What more could I possibly give you to show you that I exist? How much do you need? After all, you exist, you live. Anyway, I said, well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to annoy you. I said, I'm not annoyed. I'm just trying to get my message across. Pay attention, dummy. Yes, of course I'm here, and I made all of this, and you better look at it and realize it. And I said, okay, I got it. So that was a conversation with God. Now, I'm going to have a conversation with God right now for you, and then we're going to take just a few minutes. You can't all get in, but if you'd like to ask me anything to channel God for, I'll be glad to do it. Or you can do it yourself. But so let me see how I'm doing here. Let's say, hi, God. What do you think of the talk so far? Well, Harry, you're doing the best you can, and I can't ask more of you. You're not hearing me very well. You think you got problems with the computer in the mute. You ought to see what you humans, you is a good example, you do to mute me. I am constantly trying to give you guys some information and messages to improve, and you just aren't listening. So you're doing pretty good, Harry, considering that you can't hear. But aside from that, I think it's fine. Keep going. Thank you, God. Anything else you want to tell me right now? No, that's it. You got enough to keep you busy. So is there anyone out there that would like to ask me a question that I could pass on to God? And I'd like at least one or two, if you could make one up, so I could practice my my experience of talking to God and try and stay in the stable equilibrium sanity plane at the same time, which is a little bit of a challenge. How about it? Anybody got anything they want to know from God? Surely some, yes. Okay, Gail.
Ask God why he thinks you don't think you're talking to him.
Ask God why I think what?
Ask God why he thinks you don't think you're actually talking to him.
Oh, God, why don't I think I'm actually talking to you? Well, Harry, it's very difficult to accept the possibility that I exist, since you've spent so many years convincing yourself I don't exist. That makes it very difficult to hear me, for openers. And the second thing is that you humans and your evolved consciousness really lost touch with me a long, long time ago. And I've had a dickens of a time getting through since then. So you're not alone, but you are talking to me, and you might as well just accept it. And it doesn't matter to me that you accept it. I tell you what, Harry, you got all this stuff about beliefs and assumptions. Why don't you just assume that you're talking to me? You know, live your life as if you were talking to me. I don't care if you believe it. I'd like to have the impact I can have regardless of what your belief structure is. So keep doing your best. So Gail, that's God's response. By the way, there are whole books. I have 2 or 3 of them about talking to God, conversations with God.
Harry, I
yes.
have a question for God.
Okay, Donna.
Ask him if his feelings ever get hurt. When things go well, people thank him, and when things go poorly, they damn him. Can you ask him if his feelings ever get hurt?
Oh, God, let me see if I understand you, Donna. Donna wants to know, does it ever hurt your feelings, especially when when things go well, they think well of you, and when things don't go well, they damn you or think poorly of you. Is that it, Donna?
That's it.
Okay. Okay, God, you heard the question. Let's see what you got. Well, Harry, actually, in order to talk to people, I first have to convince them that they're hearing me. So when they respond in any way, it's kind of a good thing to me, because at least it means they're acknowledging I'm out here and can influence them. As for things going badly or poorly, oddly enough, I don't have anything to do with that. You're pretty much like an inanimate object to me. I just set the rules of the game going, just like with the book that fell off the shelf. And you guys just kind of follow the rules. And if something bad happens, it's not because I intended it or caused it. It's just the way the game is played. It may very well be mistakes you've made that cause those things to happen. For example, your wife might leave you because you've been a very poor husband. That's a good reason for her to leave. So it's not my fault. But so basically, yeah, does it hurt my feelings? No, not at all. In fact, it makes, I'm an observer of all this stuff that you guys are doing. And listen, you think watching a good TV series is fun? Ha! You should try watching living beings around the universe and what they do. It's the best soap opera. It's just wonderful. And I don't write the script. I just sort of set the stage, give the characters a little bit of personality, and let it flow. So no, it doesn't hurt my feelings. It entertains me in a great way. That's God's response. I am aware that I'm kind of filtering God's response, and I felt a little guilty for that. But it occurred to me that God probably, his native, his, her, its, there we go. There's that they that I get to use good. Their native language is not necessarily mine. So in order to communicate with me, they've got to dumb it down, way down to things I can understand. So the fact that I am filtering it is not entirely that, it's not that I'm intentionally trying to control or restrict what God says. It's just that the only way he can communicate, they can communicate with me, is to have me get it into words that make sense to me. Do we have any more questions from God? Or for God, I should say. Let's see if God had any questions for us. God sends back a question for all of us, and I object to this, God. That's not fair. God says to all of us, why? And I said, why what? He said, that's part of the question. So try that one on. Okay, let's see where we are here. Well, I have good news. You don't have to hear about the observer in any detail, and you don't have to hear about assumptions and beliefs in any detail. Not today, anyway. I'm right on the 30-minute mark, which is where I'd hope not to exceed. So that ends this current excerpt from the Gospel according to Harry.